Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Friend and Foe Show. I am your host, the Foe, Cody Defoe, and this is my excellent guest for this episode here to my left, right on the screen, I suppose, the Omen, Gabriel Lestat, local wrestler in Real Canadian Wrestling here in Edmonton. How's it going today, Gabriel?
Things are great. So we're live, right?
We are.
We're live?
We are.
Sure, we're live. Okay.
We're live.
So we're live. We're live. Okay, we're live. Yes.
Absolutely. We have a great discussion for you guys today. We are here to discuss Perfectly Timed Out with the Undertaker's announcement as a brand new Hall of Fame inductee for the 2022 class here. We will be discussing supernatural wrestlers and gimmicks through the years. Perfectly fitting for the vampire sitting beside me here. Let's start right at the bat. The Undertaker, what has he done for Supernatural? And he's really the trailblazer, the trendsetter, the one who made this all happen over the last 30 years. Why do you think it was such a strong gimmick for him? And why do you think it's spawned so many different copycats, lookalikes, and alterations?
Well, for me, it's just at that time there seemed, and you know what, even since then there almost seems to be nothing like that that's created such impact. You've got like from the music to the way he was dressed, the way he came out, even Paul Bear coming out with his face painted, almost looked like he's almost dead himself. I know, you know, if you listen to adults now that were kids back then when he first came out, they were actually creeped out by him. It's almost like because with the smoke and everything, and just the music. The way he'd go out with the tie, just completely silent and cold. It would send shivers down people's spine. You know, and then you just don't take my word for it. You know, you look back at the footage back then. You look at the audience, the kids, they're all creeped out. They're not trained for him like they did later on, right? So it was something. Yeah. It was something very unique, and they played with people's imagination. And back then they did that a lot. But with Undertaker, it was something different. They were trying to reach for something different, and then well, look what we've got now. He's in the Hall of Fame. He's done many things that people have never will never accomplish in their lifetime. He became there's a legacy there, you know, from start to finish. It was an amazing story from beginning to end. To me, it's one of those things. No one could have written it any better. His story, right?
Yeah, it's crazy to look back at the evolution and the different forms and versions from his debut as just the surprise entrance on Team Ted DiBiase at that Survivor Series, coming out as just this big, looming, dark figure, the big hat, the big coat. Nobody knew who he was or what he was or where it was going to go from there. And just evolving that from just being like big and scary to the actual like Undertaker character of the buried alive matches and raising people up on crosses in the middle of the ring and coming back from the dead so many different times, and the introduction of his brother and Kane and Paul Bearer with the urn and the different supernatural aspects of it, the being controlled from the urn to the disappearing and reappearing to summoning fire and lightning bolts and destroying the ring with Kurt Angle standing in it, and all the different things we've seen from him over the years.
And then I love that first, how they would play off the urn being the source of his powers. That's why whenever it was held, he'd bend his knee to it, right? Yeah. And having the light shoot out of the urn, they were getting extremely creative with it. And in the end, well, not in the end, but I really enjoyed how they ended up eventually going to Undertaker versus Undertaker.
Yeah.
And that, to me, I thought that was something unbelievable, something that you only see in like video games, where it's like if you're playing like Mortal Kombat or something like that, you could be Liu Kang versus Liu Kang, but in reality, that'll never happen. Even if they're twin brothers, something different. So they played off it so well. Do you remember that angle a little bit?
A little bit, yeah. I was still
Yeah.
fairly young in those days, but I do remember it happening there with the fake Undertaker coming out in the match that they had.
See, that's the magic of it. See, I have a little bit better memory of it with me being almost 100 years old now. Next, I know a year and a half I'm celebrating my centennial, so happy birthday to me.
Excellent.
But really, the way they played it off was extremely well done. The Undertaker was gone for a while. I think it was because the casket match against Yokozuna he'd disappeared since then. And then you had Ted DiBiase coming out on, like, for example, the Heartbreak Hotel, which was Shawn Michaels' little show that he did, and saying that he has the real Undertaker. The rumor was, like, did he actually have the Undertaker on his side? And he brought the Undertaker on. Is he back in his side? And then later on, you'd have the Undertaker come out in matches with Ted DiBiase, and he'd be squashing people, just destroying them, like like back then, like they used to do quite often. Bring a guy on, he'd get destroyed by the superstar to highlight his moves, and so it's like, wow, he actually does have an Undertaker. But then it was rumored that he didn't have the Undertaker, and they had the comedian Leslie Nielsen do little skits where he's the super sleuth, the investigator, the detective, trying to find out the truth. Where is the real Undertaker? Like, because Ted DiBiase is saying he's got the Undertaker, we're seeing the Undertaker, and then up until SummerSlam 1994, after Ted DiBiase comes in with his Undertaker, is when the Undertaker actually comes out with Paul Bearer, and he's wearing the purple, I believe, right? While the other Undertaker is wearing the traditional gray. And it was just that, to me, that pay-per-view was a thing of beauty, the way they put it together. And that was one of the parts of it. And it was something so memorable. You couldn't forget it. Yeah, like, guys, absolutely amazing what they ended up doing with that angle. And sure, the match, the Undertaker worked really slow at that time. So the match itself may not have been the most thrilling, but it was the build-up to the match and the fact that you've seen two Undertakers in the ring at the same time, which made it magical.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's a story for another. That's a story for another day about the slowness of matches back then. But they definitely did a lot more with the slower paces and just actually telling the story back then.
Well, but the thing is with Undertaker back then, his matches, like his compared to everybody else, like you could even have guys like back then, what they had guys like Aldo Montoya and guys like that who were a little bit quicker. So you had people at different speeds. But with him, it was the character itself moved very slow. He's supposed to be dead, right? So he moves very, very slow. So to have a slow guy versus a mirror image of him, who's slow, right there, it basically you're gonna get that slow match. It's not gonna be exciting. That's definitely not a match to headline the show, but it's a match that it captivated everybody. Like, I can't imagine being in the stadium or in the arena at that time and thinking, like, is this even possible? Am I even seeing this? Because who would believe it? Who would believe it? It was done so well. Absolutely.
Well, I mean, back then you didn't have the dirt sheets and the internet and the abundance of information available to read anything online. So it was a lot more in depth in terms of the believability of stuff back in the early 90s when he debuted too, that people actually believed he was like an actual Undertaker, that he was the guy that was embalming bodies as his day job and showing up to wrestle at night.
I still think that's the case.
Yeah.
I do. I think that's the case. Back then, you only had magazines too. Like you said, there was no internet, and you had either magazines or you had those hotlines where you would call in and to give you information. I never called those, but if I had the chance, I probably would have racked up hundreds of dollars trying to call those, get information.
Yeah, and I mean, the magazines were all produced by WWE, so they only told you what they wanted to tell you.
Yeah, some of them were, but they were basically like they were. It was a different time back then.
It was.
You'd always want to get those magazines because they have like all these pictures of like a bloody Ric Flair and stuff. It was, and so you get a little bit of information in a magazine, but it'd be totally worth it at that time. It would be totally worth it.
So we're kind of beating around it now, and that's kind of where we're going to get to over the course of this discussion through these different gimmicks. Is is something like this, could it succeed in today's world? It's been
I
attempted
believe
a lot of different times and stuff, but to the extent that the Undertaker succeeded 30 years ago, looking at the different gimmicks as we will through this discussion, could we see something come about this year, next year, within this generation, with all of this open mediums of media available at all times? Could
I mean,
something really engage and succeed?
I think anything can start to succeed, and then you just got to figure out how to continue it going, making it go. But like they've had a lot of chances. We're gonna name a whole bunch of names, I'm certain, where if done right, they could have succeeded and continue to succeed if they didn't succeed. A lot of them did succeed, but I mean, like to in the amount that the Undertaker succeeded, the years, series of years. I think that I think there's a lot that a lot that a lot of people that could have succeeded and still can succeed. Can we see something in the near future? It all depends on the creativity of those that are running the event. Because if you really think about it, I know we'll probably end up talking about Bray Wyatt later on, but it's like that's one where it's like there could have been a lot of longevity, in my opinion, right?
Yeah.
You know, it's like Undertaker didn't really stay. He didn't just stay the same character, because that's something too. You got to evolve. Look what he did. Like later on, he started moving quicker. He got the ministry, which we could talk more about.
Yeah.
Then he even changes his appearance and changes. He didn't quite change his name, but he changed his entire persona. And then when that kind of went dry a little bit, he went back, and people were hungry for it. And then he always kept evolving a little bit.
Yeah.
Let me tell you. So a few of us, it was MRB, Richie Rage, Sheik Akbar Shabazz, Michael Avery, who else? Fitzpatrick. We were at the WrestleMania where you had the triple. Sorry, the cage match, the Hell in the Cell with Undertaker and Triple H with Shawn Michaels as referee, and I remember him going out there. If I'm not mistaken, my memory doesn't fail me on this. I remember when the Undertaker lowered his hood. That was one where he was bald, was it not? It
I
was, I
believe so,
believe.
yeah.
And it was him playing mind games, because it's like we've never seen this side of the Undertaker. It just looked wild, and it was just a different look for him. And we knew what he was doing. He was messing with his opponent, and it was wild. It was brilliant. It was done very well. And for the fans, like he looked mean. It's like wow, like it's just totally different. Yeah, it just gave a different look to him. Like he always evolved. It wasn't the exact same thing, and that's the thing I think what the longevity is with these characters. If there is longevity, it's because they can evolve, they can change, and not stay stagnant or stay the same. People get bored of that, like anything, you know.
Yeah, for sure. I think that's true for any character and any gimmick, that you have to continue evolving, because if you stay the same for too long, crowds and fans are going to turn on you. They're going to get bored of you. They're not going to want to see you anymore. In order to stay relevant and have long-term success in the business, I think you have to be able to slowly morph and evolve your character in different directions and find new ways to keep it fresh and exciting for people to come out and
No,
see
and
you.
the thing is, like, it's rumored that nowadays, so keep this between you and I, is I hear people's attention span is a little bit shorter than it was back then. So it'd be a lot more likely that people would turn on you. They'd get bored of you. They'd be almost like they think it's yesterday's news. So you just gotta keep changing. You gotta
Wait,
keep.
sorry, squirrel?
Yeah, exactly. Right. Yeah. There you go. There you go.
No, for
Pay
sure.
attention, score.
You mentioned the ministry. We can jump to that. There's one other in between there, but let's go to the ministry, because that is a great way of kind of evolving into the next part of this, because he had a lot of different characters in there that got to benefit from his aura and from his abilities and just being side by side with him. The obviously,
Before you cut it in the ministry, I have a question for you. When the urn was melted down in Akama's his gold chain necklace, does that mean Kama had the powers of the undead or no? That's something to think about.
yeah, maybe.
Yeah, maybe people can comment down below and let us know what their
Absolutely.
thoughts of that.
Absolutely. Throw the comments into there. Join the discussion. Let us know what you think of it. And we'll be in the comments and chatting about this when you're watching there.
I'm looking for
The ministry, though, you had Midian and Viscera. And
Mhm.
then obviously kind of the most successful to come out of that is the Brood. Gangrel being probably the most supernatural of them all.
But you think they were the most successful? Because I would say APA were there too, were they not?
I think at the end of the day, I think Edge and Christian end up topping Bradshaw and.
Oh, you're right. You're absolutely right. You're absolutely right. In over time,
Yeah.
they continued.
Yeah, I think Bradshaw and Farouk when they were in there, but I think Edge and Christian for sure have the most long-term success. But I think Gangrel stands out as really the hierarchy of the supernatural part of that. He was the most like he was the most out there. He was something that again hadn't been seen, coming out with the fangs, drinking the chalice of blood, the bloodbaths, and just really owning that vampire persona of his that Edge and Christian got to benefit from that as well, but I feel like Gangrel really is the one that put them in the position to succeed by being so committed as he was there. How much did the vampire part of there play in your evolution?
I just like this music. I'll be honest, I just like this music. I've always been and of course the entrance, the fire, and they come up from the ground, just unbelievable. The music was incredible. He did come up with the goblet of blood, and for a while even I was even doing that, right? And but it makes sense. So essentially, I did totally steal that from without even really thinking too much about it. It's like Gangrel did that, and I'm like, sure, but in my mind, I'm thinking, but it's different. When in reality, it wasn't different when you look back, right?
Yeah.
But but the thing is, like, no, it didn't really influence me very much in what I ended up doing and how I ended up kind of moving forward with wanting to do this character and and my thoughts towards it. No, I like that. I honestly didn't really have an influence on it. I thought it was really cool. It was more the movies from like horror movies that really got me kind of intrigued on the whole vampire thing, right? But what they ended up doing was they ended up doing something where at a time people could have easily made fun of the whole vampire thing, but they treated it very serious with their bloodbaths. Lights would go out and you just see a little bit of flash here and there and you don't know what's going on. And then when lights turn on, they just cover someone in blood. Like that wasn't, I don't recall that being done before.
No.
That was wild. And during the Attitude Era, everything was taken seriously. Just the bring on vampires was very, very risky because it could have went either way. It could have went the direction of the way they ended up going, or it could have gone one where they kind of laughed out of the building, and they weren't. They actually made it work, and they ran with it, and I thought it was fairly successful.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Like the entire Ministry of Darkness and then the corporate ministry as well, where Undertaker kind of joined Vince there, but still had a little bit of the ministry aspect to it as well, and playing off that so many people got to benefit from working alongside him and getting to partake in that supernatural aspect. Jumping backwards now, because I feel like the next real big attempt they made at doing anything along these lines has to be Papa Shango.
Yes, yeah.
He came out about a year or two after Taker's debut and played that part with, the voodoo curse and the voodoo shaman coming out, rattling his witch stick and his miniature heads, and the curse on the Ultimate Warrior, and that something that probably seemed at the time like it had a lot of opportunity to go places, but unfortunately that didn't, although the man behind the mask eventually went on to have a very long and successful career himself. But
yeah.
The other ones, I guess, in the 90s, obviously we've mentioned Kane a little bit.
Let's not skip Papa Shango though.
Okay.
Too much, because what I liked was the fact that he came out with the stick. He was very creepy, and the way his entrance was, like the look and everything was very, very, very unique. And imagine how much time it'd take just to prepare just for your match, like just to for that appearance alone. It was like and using voodoo to make people throw up and stuff. Where it's like, oh, he's the Ultimate Warrior's throwing up because Papa Shango's put a spell on him. That's wild, and that messes with your imagination. And it's one of those things where maybe it could have been even more successful. There's so many things so many characters that can kind of slip through the cracks that have so much potential, but then there's so many things where they really push because they believe in it, and maybe I don't know, like I would have liked to see more of Papa Shango. I might just be assailing that aspect, but that's me. I would have loved to see more Papa Shango. I don't know whether he liked it or not, that character.
Yeah. No, it's fair. It was, again, something pushing the boundaries, and just early 90s, kind of end of what was the new generation era there, and starting into the attitude era, where they were just trying to throw stuff at the wall and see what stuck and what fit. um I felt it was something that definitely had some room to grow, but unfortunately didn't stick long enough for us to see that growth in it as well.
No, it didn't. And he was a good wrestler too, and it shows in the success in his future. He was a good wrestler too, and he still succeeded. But it's like, man, I would have loved to see more of that character.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, obviously the big other one from the 90s to talk about, we can jump to Kane, and his part with the turn from Paul Bearer to bring Kane in to fight the Undertaker when he lost control. But there was also, at the exact same time that Kane was debuting, you had the turn from Sting over on WCW, making waves over there, of the first time that WCW really tried to dive into something along those lines as well.
Yeah.
Just the growth of the Supernatural from what started out as, a big man on Team DiBiase, to all of a sudden everybody's starting to hit these notes and bring things about like that. I guess we can start with Kane here, because that's,
That's a huge one. Yeah.
summoning the fire, the blast of fire on his pyro at the entrance, the blast of fire from the ring aprons, ripping out from under the ring, dragging people down to hell. The boiler room match that Kane had with Mankind as well is something that's always stuck with me as, really creepy. Losing the mask, losing his mind, the scarred face, the history, the story, everything they told with Kane was so well done through the years.
Yeah, like one of the things that I like is his backstory. Now it might sound kind of silly because what was it? The house burnt down at the beginning. The house burnt down. Kane was in it, and Undertaker thought he was dead, and and I think what wasn't it Paul Bearer that brought him in,
Yep.
right? And that was kind of the backstory they're playing off of. Was like he thought he killed his brother. He thought he killed his brother, and like Undertaker's brother, and but he was still alive, and that's why he was supposed to be wearing the mask, was because it was supposed to be very disfigured. So it was a very almost like a type of like a slasher movie film background, kind of like Friday the 13th. This guy's supposed to be dead as a child. He comes back and he's got this almost like no nerve endings. He can't feel anything. The guy can basically take a beating and everything, and he's it's just absolutely incredible. It's just like this, you get that feel of the slasher film, like slasher villain, like from like he could be like a Mike Myers, not the comedian. He could,
Well,
yeah,
and
he
I
could
mean,
be like a
ultimately he did,
Jason,
right?
right? And I think that's what they're playing off of, and I thought it was great at that time. And his debut was incredible. The very first Hell in the Cell match was Shawn Michaels versus Undertaker, and they're finally going to settle their differences. He's going to get his hands on Shawn Michaels, and at the very end, you have this. I think didn't everything turn red?
I
I think everything
think
turned
it
red.
went. Lights went out, and then when it came back, you had like a red spotlight down on him for sure.
Yeah,
Of
yeah,
everything,
yeah. And
wasn't quite to the Bray Wyatt red level, but I'm pretty sure they had the red spotlight.
yeah.
And
And then he lays out the Undertaker, and it's like, what just happened here? And then with when you hear the backstory, and then now you got a feud, So it's Undertaker versus Undertaker, except more exciting because at this time Undertaker was moving a lot quicker. He was more agile, and then you also had Kane, who's a lot of his moves were mimicking Undertaker's, except he did a few different things, like his clothesline off the top rope, and his haymakers were different. It was a very, 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 very well told story, and it really doesn't get much better than that sometimes.
well, and then it gave them so many different opportunities. You got the Brothers
Mm.
of Destruction over the years. You got the feuds between the two of them, but then the eventual unmasking of Kane and the trauma, and when the mask came off and he actually had like the burn marks on his face and the burnt up hair, and the PTSD almost that he went through of being unmasked and having to like live with himself, and then seeing the masked version of himself start haunting him, where they had the masked Kane come back and have the match with the unmasked Kane as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, it was. I thought it was neat when they had the partially shaved head for him, like, but if like it was something. Of course, he wasn't going to keep forever,
Yeah.
because he does have to walk in public, right? But
Yeah.
he's like it was very good that they took off the mask. But I wish this is. If you go with the story, you kind of have to go with it. You know what I mean? If you make the story, you got to go with it. So, unfortunately, his face wasn't disfigured, but it actually sounds very bad me actually saying. It's one of those
Yeah.
things. But like I don't know. I don't know. That's just me kind of overthinking things. But it didn't really stop his popularity. He kept going. But I am glad that you skipped his part teaming up with X-Pac, telling people to suck it with a voice box. Because I'm reminding you of that because I'm remembering because we're having this discussion, but until now I forgot. So that is on you, my friend.
That's a credit to Kane though, because between that and Team Hell No, despite being the big brooding scary monster, he still had the comedy chops to run with the best of them.
He did. Yeah. And got off that.
Yeah, just before we jump back, because we're going to talk about Sting here, but I do want to give a quick shout out, because I haven't yet, to one of our good friends out here that we always have to make sure that we're acknowledging. Mr. Rich King at RK Athletics here in Edmonton, locally based professional wrestler as well as fitness guru. Give him a follow over here at RK Athletics 1 on all the social medias. He offers in-person training in the Edmonton area as well as fitness and training advice for those of you remotely who can't get to him in person. He'll help you with setting up routines with fitness goals, trying to reach your goal weights and goal fitness levels.
There aren't many people with the build that man has. That guy's jacked to the max, honestly.
Absolutely.
And as mean as he is in the ring, as much as he can be an butthole to people, pardon my language, or verbiage, to people in the ring, he is someone that when he professionally, he'll be very respectful and make you feel very comfortable while you're training with him. I would strongly suggest anyone to reach out to him if they're looking at achieving some fitness goals.
Absolutely. Jumping back, Sting started out as the masked kind of almost like a very much a warrior-esque gimmick in his early days. Sting from the Police kind of vibes there with the bleach blonde hair, the bright colors. It wasn't until the late 90s that we saw him kind of take that turn into the brooding character that everybody knows and loves and remembers him for nowadays. Very Crow-esque there, showing up in the rafters, looking down at people from above, the black trench coat, the white face paint, the ability to disappear and reappear into the ring at a moment's notice or disappear out of the ring, show up on trophy stands at Seth Rollins' performances, all the different things we've seen from him. Probably the most successful rendition of this after Undertaker, I believe. Would you agree?
See, I 100% would. So Sting's another one of those, how we talk about people constantly reinventing themselves and changing their character. So you had Sting. So keep in mind, he was wearing the Warrior faceman because he actually started off in wrestling tag teaming with Ultimate Warrior as Dingo Warriors. So they wore the same face paint and ended up going to the opposing companies. But people, I guess it depends where you're from. Some people recognize Ultimate Warrior more. Some people recognize Sting. Sting would sell at stadiums. And then in WCW, he ended up, from the Bart Simpson haircut, starting to grow his hair a little bit, turning it dark, and the face paint. I loved it because he was out of the picture for a while, but he'd be up in the rafters during shows, watching down, and his face paint from the Ultimate Warrior face paint would start growing and growing and growing, eventually covering his whole face, and then changing to a very similar. First, it was the Crow's, same as the Crow. From the comic books and the movies, same face paint. He changed it later on. Who knows? Maybe for copyright reasons, or just want to be a little bit more original. And it was really cool. It was a good story because at that time, when he was watching down, he was watching WCW being taken over by cancer, which was the New World Order. New World Order, Kevin Nash, Scott Hall started off. They got Hulk Hogan, who was basically the top guy, babyface for that company, joining the dark side essentially, and then slowly. Then they got Eric Bischoff. then they started getting all these other wrestlers, and it was almost like a cancer taking over the body that was WCW. They even took over one of the nitros. They basically took everything down and took over the nitros. That had never been done before. And Sting was watching during most of this. And I still remember the very first time Sting said anything in, I don't know, it might have been a year, maybe more. He was in the ring with J.J. Dillon beside him and him facing Hulk Hogan. He has this bat in his hand. He points at J.J. Dillon and says, "You have no guts." He looks at Hulk Hogan, holds the bat at him, and says, "You're a dead man." That's all he said. And that's the first thing we heard, and it was probably a year. Absolutely incredible. That right there was like a very magical moment. Like that was amazing, and you want to see more of him. And the reason I loved that character so much was because first off, he always had the sharpshooter. I loved Bret Hart growing like when I was younger, and so seeing him do the sharpshooter, not as well, but seeing him do the sharpshooter was wild. But I also loved the Crow when the Crow came out. So it was the fact that he was doing like a mimic of the Crow was wild, because the Crow itself is supernatural. He dies, gets brought back to life because his soul, it can't rest, and that was what has happened in WCW. His soul couldn't rest because something he helped build was dying, right? So he couldn't rest, and he came back, and he fought to basically rid it of the evil. It was a very, very, very well done character. What he had done at that point, he reinvented himself. People might have got bored of the old Sting, you know, like with the Bart Simpson bleached haircut and just the Ultimate Warrior face paint. People probably would have got bored of it by, who knows, maybe like 97, 98. He reinvented himself, and people loved him. He was one of their top guys, right? And they trusted him enough to be one of the leaders to fight against the NWO until he joined the red and black for some reason. But I didn't understand that.
Yeah.
But hey,
WCW went off the rails at the end there. Nobody understood what was going on by that point.
Yeah. But they loved it. We watched it anyway, so everybody wins.
I mean, you say that all about Sting, and I agree with all of it there, that Sting is iconic. There's a reason his nickname is the Icon Sting, as he's announced now in All Elite. But it's also, we're talking Taker and what Taker's done for the business and for these types of characters.
Yes.
Taker and Sting is the biggest missed opportunity in wrestling history. It
seems that way.
As far as dream matches go, two ships in the night sailing parallel that just never managed to cross paths.
See, the thing is, sometimes these things that we really want to see, it's best that we don't.
Yeah.
Because sometimes you want to see a match so bad, and when you see it, it just isn't what you expected. And I'm not saying that they couldn't have meshed and had an amazing match, but sometimes things are best left to the imagination. Like, it's just because there are some example of dream matches that ended up happening, and they might have not lived up to the hype. Cause sometimes it's impossible, but so sometimes, and you're right, it was awesome. But their level of the supernatural was totally different, because with Undertaker, his was like it was such a dark. The Buried Alive matches, the Hell in the Cells, the
casket,
the Inferno matches, casket matches, all this stuff. Sting didn't do any of that. The closest to my knowledge that Sting did, and maybe he did stuff in Impact or TNA, which I'm unaware of, but he did wrestle Vampiro, and he got lit on fire and fell from the Titantron all the way down on fire. But other than that, like, I think Sting was based more off the comic book and the movie, so his was based off more being like just coming back to life because his soul won't rest. But with Undertaker, it was just a dead man, and I think the Undertaker did a lot more with supernatural, especially like with the urn and everything, played it off very well, right? It is a missed opportunity, but I also see their supernatural, the stories between and the abilities are very, very different. So to me, it's not really we want to see the match, but is it really like a missed opportunity?
It would have been a really interesting story to see develop, to see how they played that off if the
Mm.
opportunity had been given. Ultimately, I would have preferred, if we were going to see it at all, it would have been in their primes in the late 90s, early
Yes.
2000s there. When we had the opportunity, when Sting finally made that jump and came over to join WWE, and we had the
Mhm.
Hunter Hearst Helmsley match and we had the Seth Rollins match. By that point, I think Sting and Undertaker were so far on the back hill of their careers that a match would have just disappointed anybody. I don't fault WWE for avoiding that because we would have had such high expectations, and probably all as fans felt let down by
Yeah.
what they would have been able to give us at their ages and their how beaten their bodies had been after 20 plus years of being in the industry.
And I don't think they'd want that either. I don't think that they'd want that either. For maybe for that reason, because at that point maybe their bodies couldn't give you a match that would live up to the hype. So maybe they wouldn't want it either. And who knows?
Yeah,
Maybe that's why we didn't get the match. I don't know,
yeah.
but that's a possibility. You
Um,
know, maybe Triple H was like, "I'll put you go through a good match." You know, Seth Rollins. Who knows? Maybe he was like, "I've always loved you and would love the opportunity to wrestle you." And but in terms of Undertaker and Sting, maybe they decide, let's leave it as a mystery for people, and
yeah,
and then maybe make it one day in a video game of some sort, or
yeah,
something. Who knows? Who knows? Maybe, yeah,
for
maybe they
sure.
can play out people's imagination later on.
Yeah. Even just something like tell a story of it, Hollywood's huge. You could easily tell a Hollywood story of an alternate reality where that match happened with different people playing the characters and tell the story in the ring as part of the movie of what you would have wanted to do with
Or
the creative story.
here's an idea: having look at Mortal Kombat. They've had Freddy, they've had Jason, they've had all these different characters. Why not have the Undertaker and Sting?
Yeah.
Just an idea
Just
for
to
whoever's
appease the
listening.
fans. Yeah.
Somebody make it happen.
Absolutely. You touched on Vampiro. That's where I was going to go next. So let's go there. We talked about the Brood as the vampire characters.
Yeah.
Vampiro did it a little bit more of a punk rock style vampire. Reminded me a little bit of like a Spike from Buffy the Vampire Slayer with how he played off his vampire character. But he also had the coffin matches, the casket matches, played a lot of kind of that, living dead, undead character to himself as well in his entrances and in his matches. And just what he was capable of doing and putting his body through. I don't recall Vampiro specifically doing too much with the supernatural, but I do remember him really playing up the vampire persona a lot. Um, Anything specific of Vampiro that stood out to you too?
With me, first we gotta recognize he was a huge star in Mexico. I actually do have a bit of a story to tell you. Aside from that, totally segueing from the segue. Um, so one of my buddies I grew up with, his cousin used to actually play hockey with Vampiro, and from what I was told was he was a very good player, but coaches didn't take him seriously because he always had his hair in different colors. Like, he's a bit of a punk at that point, right? You know, so they never. So who knows? Maybe he could have made it in hockey. And I thought that was a neat story. But yeah, he was a huge star in Mexico, which he was called Vampiro Canadiense, I think is what his name was, right? You could even buy the action figures where it says Vampiro Canadiense from I think it was AAA. But he was a huge star back then. So when WCW picked him up, there was huge opportunity there, huge opportunity, and like you're right. I don't think he did anything very supernatural, but again, he was a vampire. Maybe he didn't have to do anything supernatural. He just knew he was a vampire, right? And it
Yeah.
was, yeah, I was a huge fan of him at that point. Like I thought he was really cool in the ring. He did some wild kicks and stuff, and his finishing move, Nail in the Coffin, I think is what it was called. I'm like, that is such a cool name. I wish I could steal that name. You know, um, yeah, no, and he ended up teaming up with ICP for a bit there. They ended up coming
Yep.
out with him for a bit.
Yep.
And then yeah, and then his feud with Sting. I think he did any bloodbath Sting at one point too, except
I believe so.
the blood came from the ceiling. I believe so, and that was during that angle. And later on the top of Titantron, lighting Sting on fire, Sting going off, could have killed him. You know what I mean? And it's the guy like just yeah like that's quite the history right there of just us just talking about that alone.
Yeah.
I don't know if he did anything supernatural, but he was a vampire. That's supernatural on its own.
Yeah, the stuff he did with Sting for sure. The fact that he was teamed with ICP for a while there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, it was really cool to watch at that time because I didn't know anything about his Mexico stuff, but it was later on you learn about people's history because back then the internet was fairly new. But yeah, just absolutely like it was a very cool character to introduce.
Yeah. From there, basically from the end of WCW being bought out by WWE and the invasion angle, there was a little bit of a lull in the supernatural characters throughout the industry that nothing really kind of jumps out or stands out as anyone who really was a part of it. Let's take a break for a minute. Let's talk about our wonderful sponsor of today's video, Manscaped. Imagine shaving with a sleek, well-designed, and optimized trimmer that makes shaving time your favorite time in the bathroom. I'm personally one of the first people to try the new Lawnmower 4.0. I'm blown away by the performance. Look at this. The craftsmanship, the detail, all of it just fantastic. Sleek design, nice shiny cover, even a nice little light on here to take care of your jewels while you're in there. It is waterproof up to a certain amount, to the point that you can take it in the shower with you and take care of all of your grooming necessities in there in one handy place. Manscaped engineered the ultimate groin and body trimmer by focusing on intelligent functionality and an incredibly comfortable grooming experience. Their fourth generation trimmer features a cutting edge ceramic blade to reduce grooming accidents. Thanks to their advanced skin safe technology, I now feel confident shaving my boys. This upgraded trimmer includes a multi-function on-off switch that can engage a travel lock. It also gives you the ability to turn off the 4000K LED spotlight when needed for a more precise shave. Lawnmower 4.0 even allows you to customize your trim through the additional guards, available in lengths and sizes from 1 to 4. Take your pick, however long or short you choose to go, or go without the guard and give yourself a nice, smooth trim down to the skin. Did I mention the wireless charging? The new charging system plugs the base into the wall. The trimmer itself has no holes, no cords, trims nice and neatly, and also tucks away nice and neatly for a nice, good charge to make sure that battery is going to last you a long time. Men, if you've been shaving with the same trimmer on your face, you've been doing it wrong. No person wants to end up with pubes in their mouth. Get the Lawnmower 4.0 now and make sure that you've got everything taken care of and you're not mixing and matching your face and your pubes, because nobody really wants that. While you're at it, take a look at some of the other wonderful products they've got there. I've got it all stored away here in the nice shed that comes with the initial purchase package. You can get yourself some wonderful crop preserver. Take care of your boys with some ball deodorant. You can also get some crop reviver for a little spritz when you need a little pick-me-up during the day. Make sure you're fresh and don't have time for a full shower or deodorizing. There's also a wonderful collection of additional products on here. Additional hand trimmers. You can get yourself a crop cleanser. You can get some foot duster. They've got cologne. They've got a crop mop ball wipe. Lots of options. Check them out. Manscaped.com. Right now with Love Wrestling, we have our amazing deal. Get 20% off and free shipping with the code Love Wrestling when you go and place your order at Manscaped. That's 20% off and free shipping anywhere in the world. Canada, US, Europe, Africa, Asia, wherever you're watching from. Get yours now, pay no extra for shipping, and get a great 20% discount on your entire order. I'm gonna touch here because it's a down period, and I think this is all gonna kind of play together in where I want to head with this in terms of the gimmicks that didn't work out, where we say they were throwing stuff at the wall and trying to see what stuck throughout the Attitude Era. So we had a bunch through this area before WCW was gone. There was the much questioned failed attempt at debuting the Seven character. We're gonna jump back on Seven here in a sec, but just gonna lump all of kind of the ones that didn't go together, and then we can kind of touch on each of them individually. So you had Seven in WCW.
Yep.
You had Mordecai come in as kind of the white heavenly alter ego to, or like counterpart to the Undertaker attempt.
Yep.
When that failed, you then had Kevin Thorne in the WWE rendition of ECW doing a vampire character as well. Throughout this time, we had the Boogeyman came, who, I mean, everybody remembers the Boogeyman. He had mild success with the comedy stuff, but no real success as a wrestler. lots of different attempts here to try and do things with the supernatural. I know we really want to touch on the 7 thing because it's the best example of a failed gimmick, but we'll go through each of those that I just mentioned there as something that tried, had a little bit maybe of
Yeah.
potential and didn't go anywhere.
Seven failed because they didn't get the chance, as how I feel. I remember watching it as like on TV, watching him. So like he's hovering above the ground, well above the ground, hovering, looking down, looking around, right? Face completely white, wearing black trench coat, black hat, some black makeup around the eyes, and very eerie smoke all over the ground. I don't know how much they must have spent on this entrance. He's going out very eerie. This is amazing. They introduced him as 7. This is so cool. He goes in the ring, grabs the microphone, and well, it's Dustin Runnels, formerly Goldust, that basically is like just craps on the whole gimmick. He's like, I ain't doing this. I'm putting things. I'm obviously summarizing and paraphrasing things, and basically saying he's not doing this silly character. He's basically there. He's himself, and completely destroyed it before given an opportunity. But me, because I don't know. I love those types of characters. I'm like, man, if you just gave it its chance, even though you don't like the character, it could have became really popular done right, and you could have made a lot of money, right? Because I thought that was such an awesome entrance until he grabbed the microphone and basically crapped on the whole thing.
Well, the entrance was fantastic, and
Amazing.
absolutely. But you go back to the vignettes leading up to that, where they were promoting and advertising, and he was going to show up on July 7th because he's the character 7, and he is like creeping outside kids' bedroom windows, telling them to come with him, and just super eerie, creepy, like horror thriller vibes there,
Yeah.
like basically child napping people's kids out of their bedrooms late at night. And
who knows? Maybe he's starting a wrestling organization. He's training them when they're young.
I mean, they never actually showed him kidnapping people. It was just a really weird, like, peeping Tom through a kid's bedroom while they're playing, and they meet and put their hand up to the window with him, like, come with me. But I guess that was kind of why that didn't go, because the broadcasting studio questioned where the gimmick would go and didn't really want to find out, which is unfortunate because, as we've seen with Dustin Runnels / Rhodes, he's had success a million times over with the Goldust character. Not really a part of our discussion here because it wasn't really touching on the supernatural, but I would have loved to see what he could have done with a character like what they were doing with 7.
He could have done great if he believed in it, and I don't think he ended up believing it, which is why he grabbed the microphone. And a lot of times back then, people just spoke their minds, and he did that, and they completely destroyed the character, and then didn't really have much of a successful run after that. Yeah, that kind of that's a shame, because I can't imagine being someone who invests so much money into it, watching it on the monitor in the back and just listen to what he says. It's like, wow, you know how much money I put in you just now? And like, that would have been absolutely devastating. But me, I've always had a wild imagination. And when I seen that, I'm like, this is fantastic. This is amazing. Look at this. This is so cool. Then he destroys it.
It's unfortunate, for sure.
It is, totally.
But then you had the other ones that actually tried to work and didn't. So let's go to Kevin Thorne, because he had the Mordecai gimmick. It didn't work.
You're jumping ahead. Because there's a couple. There's the demon. Do you recall the demon?
I don't.
Okay, so the demon, and this is fair, because there's going to be a lot of things that we might touch base later in regards to like Impact and TNA, which I have no clue about, right? Because like I didn't follow it too much. So for the demon, it was really cool. They actually had Kiss perform. So I don't know how much that cost. Kiss perform for the introduction of the demon, and he came out in a Kiss casket, which you could actually buy at the time. If you want to be buried in a Kiss casket when your time is done on this planet, you could buy a Kiss casket, and it was very cool. It was shaped like Gene Simmons, I believe, and it opened up, and this guy really tall, dressed just like Gene Simmons from Kiss, big long tongue, and he was and red blood
I
coming up from his mouth.
I believe
Really
he just actually came back for a match in Impact just a couple months back.
big now, yeah,
Yeah.
and it was so cool, and I don't know, I wasn't too entertained by his performance in the ring, maybe, and looking back, who knows, maybe I was being critical, but I think that's kind of one of the things that held him back, because they put so much money into it. It looked really cool, with the right guy doing it, maybe could have been really successful. There was that one. Do you remember the Yeti?
I mean, ish.
So you got the Yeti. Comes a giant mummy, comes out, it's a Yeti. He almost like hugs people and goes like this and starts shaking, convulsing, and they're like he's draining their power. And that obviously didn't work for obvious reasons. And I think that was Giant Gonzalez who was under that, underneath those
Yeah.
that wrapping. And then you've also got Shockmaster, one of the best, wow, or most memorable vignettes ever, where he breaks through the wall wearing the silver
Stormtrooper helmet.
stormtrooper helmet, falling off to put it back on. And the reason I would suggest, and you can disagree with me on that, the reason I suggest that the Shockmaster had supernatural powers is because he could talk over without a microphone, and everybody could hear him. That was pretty cool. Unfortunately, it didn't really work out for him, and who knows, maybe for the best. I don't know. I had to make mention of him because I honestly think people should talk about Shockmaster more than they do nowadays.
Yeah, for sure. Again, all of those would fit under the same umbrella there of the gimmicks that didn't really go anywhere, but maybe not quite as big of names as the one that I mentioned. Mordecai, though.
Yes.
Because Mordecai came in, and I remember Mordecai's debut and seeing the vignettes leading up to it, and then his entrance when he actually arrived. And he really was like a heaven-sent soldier to combat the darkness of the Undertaker. It was like a story built to happen. And apparently it was the end goal of the character, but for whatever reason, the gimmick didn't catch. It didn't go over. He had a couple matches against, I think Scotty 2 Hotty was one of them. I forget who the other was. And then just faded away. And then we see him eventually repackaged and come back as Kevin Thorne, the Dark Vampire in ECW. Which had a little bit of legs in ECW, but never really took off in the mainstream for anyone that wasn't watching the WWE ECW version.
Yeah, I was very disappointed with the following through of the Mordecai direction they were going with him, because it was such a cool character. And at that point, like, who knows what was going on behind the scenes? Who knows what ended up happening? What ended up stopping that? I'm not sure. It's probably out there on the internet somewhere.
Yeah.
But yeah, like it was such a cool looking character. It's like, man, this is something. This is almost like, if you want to see Undertaker versus Undertaker, sure, we got that, but this is almost like the next thing to that, which people could have seen, and it would have been. This could have even, let's say if it wasn't even a good match, or for whatever reason, people would have bought into it and wanted to see it. It could have done really well. Speaking of Kevin Thorne, though. Back when I was doing the Eclipse character with the mask, we were doing pay-per-views in Winnipeg, and for I forget the name of the company. It was run by Mike Davidson, a gentleman named Mike Davidson. So he'd bring in tons of guys. He had like Bob Holly, he had guys like Billy Gunn, he had guys like Tajiri, he'd bring in tons of guys, Sabu, so many guys. And I was very fortunate to be wrestling with my tag partner Kamikaze at the time. And we actually got to wrestle against Rick Victor from Ascension, who used to wrestle as Apocalypse for PWA, as well as it was him and Kevin Thorne, who's calling himself Seven Thorne, probably because of copyright issues, with Gangrel ringside. And I was very lucky to have a match against those two with Gangrel ringside. Now it's absolutely unbelievable. I just had to throw it out there because that's a great memory in my career so far. I'm very fortunate to have had that opportunity. But yeah, like as for the Kevin Thorne inside ECW, I feel the Mordecai character would have caught fire a lot quicker if they had stuck with that. It was just the build up. I think could have worked out so much better. The character looked cooler too, and that's just me being biased, I guess, because I would have just loved that character. Like all the white, something stood out from it.
The
And this
white
is a
dye
guy
to the
who,
hair and the beard, the white like outfit, absolutely. The white light, just he
yeah,
looked like that savior from above.
yeah, but yet also had that like twist where it's like this guy isn't good.
Yeah.
He's saying he's good, but he's not good. This is like a guy who's trying to be a wolf in sheep's clothing, and it's obvious. This guy is not good. He's actually, he's evil in a way too. It was wild. It could have worked. It could have worked out. It obviously didn't. You know, again, maybe we want it to work out, but if it did, maybe we would have been disappointed. Like we were talking about the Sting and Undertaker match. We want it so bad, where maybe it would have disappointed. Maybe.
It definitely had the potential to tell that story, though, of the guy who speaks of having high morals, but is really, a wolf underneath there, against the Taker as someone who has like no morals to speak of, but is still like the baby face of the story, who's going to do the right thing at the end to take out the guy who's trying to hide behind his morals despite being sinister.
There's a mask he was wearing. It was a mask he was wearing. And it's like we know you're up to something. You're trying to pretend you're good. We know you're bad. It's just it was something done very, very well.
Yeah. We're gonna get into the more recent stuff here in a sec, but just two more from kind of that era there. Boogeyman is one, with the worms, with the popping up out of nowhere, the worm baths that he gave people in the ring, the eating the worms, the red light when he terrified King Booker and Sharmell in the backstage there and chased them out of their dressing room with Booker wearing nothing but a towel. A lot of the creepy, very, very sinister motives in a lot of what he did, but it came across in that sense that a lot of it was, potentially of the supernatural, that he was able to summon worms from nowhere at a moment's notice too.
Mm-hmm.
And then the other one that I haven't mentioned yet, and I don't know how much you really followed with Impact back in its early years, but Abyss with Father James Mitchell is again one of those ones he was almost like a cross between Mankind, Undertaker, and Kane, all kind of blended into one.
Yeah.
He didn't feel pain. He was tormented. He wore the mask. You never saw his face. But he was also very ominous and could like disappear, reappear, showed up with like thumbtacks and a 2x4 and lots of different stuff like that made it. I don't know if he ever did anything really, really crazy supernatural, but he felt like an amalgamation and someone that was really prompted and inspired by those who came before him.
Yeah. I never followed him too much, but I did see a few of his matches, so I knew of him. And I thought it was a really cool character, just the way he looks. It's almost like a demented character. From an outsider's point of view, not being too familiar with him, he looked like a demented character, very similar to like Mankind, where this guy's gonna be an animal in the ring. You don't want to get in the ring with this guy. And like you explained, it's almost like he doesn't feel anything. And that's one thing that I liked about the Mankind character and characters like that is where they have almost that either they enjoy pain or they don't feel the pain. So how do you stop someone like that? You got to keep hitting them till they stop moving. That's the only way, because you're not going to hit them to the point where it's like, okay, I've had enough, because they will never have enough. And a character like that, he'll never have enough. You got to keep just beating on him until his body won't allow him to move, right? I love those characters for that reason, because it really plays off your imagination. Like, this guy is something to be feared. Who would want to step in the ring with a guy that looks like that, or dresses like that, and wears a mask like that, and acts like that? It's for the fans. It's frightening. It's and his move, the black hole slam.
Black hole slam, yeah.
Yeah, like that's I don't know if anybody's done that before him. If they have, he's the first person I've seen do that. And since then, how many people have done it, because it's such a cool move and it's incredible. The way the spin is, and then boom, it's like a big exclamation point. It's like a big, profanity word. You know what I mean?
It's been a while since I've seen the move. It's like a swinging sidewalk slam, right?
What's that?
It was like a
No, it was almost like the boss man slam, where the opponent's hitting the ropes, he comes back at him, almost hooks him like a rock bottom, spins around, like does a
yeah.
full 360, and then boom, plastic guy.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking of. I call it a swinging sidewalk slam, but I think we're talking the same move there.
I think we are. Yeah.
I think Baron Corbin or Happy Corbin does something very similar to
I
the
think so
Boss Man
too.
Slam too.
I
That
think
looks a lot like it.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, that was. I think Abyss was the last one that really stood out as someone who did it well and had the success with it. And obviously, being the first one in Impact to do it, he's probably a large part of why it succeeded. There was another big gap there where we didn't see a lot of new introductions of anyone really trying to play with the supernatural or bend reality or something. And then there's been a little bit of a resurgence of it in the last, I'd say five-ish years.
Yeah, but they
With just gonna throw them out there. You have Finn Balor, what he does with the demon. You have Bray Wyatt between both the Wyatt family and his rebirth as the Fiend and the Firefly Funhouse stuff, and then involving Alexa Bliss and Randy Orton with that. Impact's been doing a lot. You had the Matt Hardy stuff with the Broken Matt and his alter ego and the psychosis, but also the stuff that happened at the Hardy compound with the Lake of Reincarnation is probably the most supernatural thing I've seen outside of some of the Bray Wyatt stuff recently, with putting Jeff in the Lake of Reincarnation and doing it again with Bray Wyatt, putting them in the lake and like dunking them, and then you don't see them and they come back as a completely different character. Like you put them in and a rebirth. It literally is almost like a cleansing of the baptism where you dunk and you come out a new man, as they say. And Matt Hardy took it to a whole new level. You dunks you and you come out someone completely different the next time you're on TV. And then Impact right now with Decay is kind of probably the most successful one currently on TV. I would think that Rosemary Havoc, Crazy Stephen Black Taurus, the darkness, the dark music, with the Wrestle House stuff that they've been doing the last couple of years through COVID. It's showed a lot more supernatural, that Rosemary has the ability to just snap her fingers and teleport a dozen people across the country into a house, and a lot of stuff like that. So there's a lot of new stuff coming out. I know you haven't seen a lot of it yourself. You want to kind of pick up on any of the characters that I just mentioned, but just
so with me, one of the things that I do want to talk about is Bray Wyatt is the example when you were like, could anything work in the next few years here? And that was an example of something that could work, because like that mask that he wore was super creepy, and he was a super talented wrestler, and I think people were buying into it. People were loving it. Sure, that's debatable, right? Some people aren't going to be a big fan, but realistically, I think that's something that they could have kept going. He could have been the next Undertaker if they would have kept him and kept going. But what can you do after you burn someone alive? You know what I mean? I mean, in the end, you could still make them come back, But then it seems like they handed it off to Alexa Bliss instead of actually making it kind of like where she's almost poisoned by him. She almost replaced him. So I wasn't too much of a fan of that. I mean, I'm not taking anything away from her by any means. Like I mean, she's taken what she took what she could and ran with it and did a good job doing it. But it really buried Bray Wyatt in his in his performance, and sorry, not his performance, but his ability as the Fiend. I thought the Fiend was freaking awesome.
I think it diminished his value, right? It made what he was doing seem minuscule. The fact that they could pull Alexa and have her do the exact same thing. Like, oh, we don't need Bray because we could just grab anybody who can tell the same story.
Yeah, no, exactly. Yeah. And that's the thing. It's like, if anything, if they would have ran with anything, it should have been him. In my opinion, of course, this is my perspective. The guy was definitely it was almost like, because I think it's neat what Finn Balor does with the demon. It looks cool. The music's cool. The entrance is cool. But he still tends to wrestle the same. With so to me, I think it looks cool, but to me, all the people want to see the demon. I don't want to be mean in any ways, but I'm just gonna say it. But does it make a difference other than the look?
More modern. We haven't seen the demon enough recently, I don't think. But what we have seen of him in main roster since the injury in the Universal title match when he first won it, at least. He hasn't been around very much, and when he has, it's been very Balor-esque, just in face paint.
You know, and I think that's a missed opportunity, you know, because what's the difference, right? Other than the way you look.
I felt like NXT Balor or NXT Demon, they played him a lot more like he was a lot more indestructible in the move or in the ring. He'd take the moves and he'd bounce up, and he'd take the moves and he'd bounce up, and just the matches he had with Kevin Owens and Samoa Joe and stuff, it was like they started getting terrified at the fact that they just couldn't beat this guy.
And see, and that makes sense. That makes sense. And that's kind of how they had it with, that's kind of what they could have had with The Fiend. And they were actually going in that direction. The match he was having, I'm not a huge fan of, and I'm sure many people would agree with me, and not a fan of them having the red lights, where I'd imagine it'd be almost impossible for the fans up top to see what's going on. But it was a neat idea, and they could have still moved forward with something similar. But man, like that was such a cool character. That could have been their next Undertaker. Where it's like, where it's like, you know, you just keep building on that character. But again, you know, like they're where they are, I am where I am. So who knows what I know?
Yeah.
So who knows what they know that I don't? But it's like it's those guys. They like, man, what a missed opportunity, because that guy he was doing very, very good under that character, and that character, people were digging it, whether you love it or hate it. It was effing cool. That's what I gotta say.
Yeah. Even the early Bray Wyatt stuff, though, pre-Fiend, the cult leader with the Wyatt family and the Sister Abigail stuff, like a lot of that just had all this potential, like having a Sister Abigail show up that he bends the knee to, right? Like he was talking to Sister Abigail in the backstage segments a lot of times. And then when Randy burnt the house and dug up Sister Abigail's body, like that could have went so much different, that they could have had a Sister Abigail character show up and basically a Bray Wyatt becomes subservient to a Paul Bearer like manager.
And that's the thing. And that's kind of like how we were talking about Undertaker earlier, is you just got to keep evolving. And that character had so much opportunity to evolve. Look what they've done already, from Bray Wyatt to what he had done to The Fiend. And he could just kept building on that. Just got to, you know, be creative, I guess. I don't know. You know, like to me, missed opportunity. That could have been the next big character that's supernatural, but now it just leaves room for everybody else, I guess, right?
Yeah, we've got a gap in that place right now. There's nobody really doing it. The Demon Finn has kind of faded away. Alexa's back now, but not really doing the Lily stuff. But again, like you said, for Alexa, huge credit to her for running with what she was given there. Yes. She loves the horror movie genre. She's had like the Freddy Krueger cosplays and the Harley Quinn cosplays and a lot of the different stuff with comics and horror. That having her in a role with something like that where she truly enjoyed it, it showed through her work that she was enjoying what she was doing. You know, it was a little silly and a little goofy with Lily on the turnbuckle, like mind controlling and transfixing people and like different things like that. But it's what we loved in the 90s and the early 2000s with Taker. So I think we all have a little cynicism to it nowadays, that we, you know, kind of roll our eyes at, like, really, I'm supposed to take this seriously? But at the same time, when it works and we love it. So that's why I question if it's something that we can actually see succeed in the future, because there are such a large portion of fans that just roll their eyes as soon as they see someone doing something that's crazy supernatural.
I think Bray Wyatt with The Fiend proved to us that it could.
Yeah.
Because it was such a cool character. People believed in it. He looked mean. He looked like he could kick ass. Pardon my language. He put on great matches under that character. And it was something where if people were walking by and they see it on TV, they'd be like, holy jeez, that's awesome. Or like it was either terrifying or really cool. But you knew not to mess with them. Like is a feel that people would get. And yeah, it could be successful. I think right there is evidence alone that it could be successful, done right. That's it, you know. It could, yeah. I'm behind it. You know, absolutely. Like me, I'm a vampire. I'm behind it.
I mean, right now NXT has been doing a little bit with the supernatural, or they had been. It's faded away for a couple weeks, but for the last half year or so, they'd run the story with Tien Shaw, Xia Li joining this group with Mei Ying as the leader. A lot of supernatural, like mist spraying, face paints, dark lights, and then Boa was a part of it as well. Xia Li and Boa bending the knee to Mei Ying. Xia Li got drafted to the main roster, so she kind of moved away. Mei Ying lost a match and has now left and disappeared, and now Boa has taken on that mantle of the leader. I'll explain all this because I know you haven't been watching yourself, but he's
Yeah, no,
the
no, I appreciate
last
that, yeah.
the last story that they've just told with Boa now. He's been kind of battling with his inner demons, where one day you'll see him as clean-faced Boa himself, and then he all of a sudden like turns back, and he's got like the full face paint on and is more of like a demon-esque version of himself. He had a feud last month with Solo Sikoa, the third Uso brother, who's down in NXT right now. Something along those lines again, where it's maybe not quite to the demon, because it seems like Finn has the ability to almost control his changes. More of something where he's battling that alter ego and fighting with himself, that he's a stand-up guy at one time, but then somebody does something, or he like his anger or his emotions get out of check, and all of a sudden he becomes a more monstrous being and isn't even in control of his own body or his own actions. So something like that is what we have kind of active right now. I mentioned Decay. You've got Malachi Black doing a little bit with the darkness and coming and going and disappearing under a cloud of darkness. A little bit of that kind of Sting-esque version of the dark brooding overseer, but nothing really to an Undertaker or a Fiend or Kane level right now. So there's very much a gap.
You have to ride that train a little bit careful, right? Because if you can't get too hokey, or you get too hokey, people don't believe in it. People don't believe in your product. It becomes a bit of a joke, right? So you have to be very careful, So I understand why I don't get too many characters that are too many characters that come out and are very like much like the Undertaker, stuff like that, because sometimes they can be mocked and almost like it can become like what ended up happening with the Demon or something like that, or like it can destroy the credibility that you're trying to maintain. And at that point, it's like, well, I guess at that point you can't try it again for a year or two at least, right? So it's those are waters you gotta kind of ride carefully, I think, because it could easily backfire, so you got to be very smart about it.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree there for sure, because we've seen so many of them backfire, right? It's easy to see that. Some honorable mentions. I know we discussed a little bit beforehand on what we thought. Stardust, when he had Connor and Victor the Ascension with him there, a very cosmic entity character that had the potential to go places with something that could have ended up supernatural. I remember Connor and Victor, where they'd come up from the bottom. They always had a little bit of that feel to them, even in their NXT days. But when they joined with Cody as Stardust, it felt like that had room to grow. And Cody trying to say everything was written in the stars, and galactic beings and cosmic entities, and all of what he did trying to get that Stardust character success was a missed opportunity, I think. And then the other one that kind of borderlines on supernatural for me, but I chose not to include overall, is the superhero characters. The Hurricane with the alter ego. You've got Nikki ASH right now. You had Molly Holly. You've seen a little bit of that with the superheroes, where they have one ego, and then their superhero ego that sometimes they play a little bit like the super strength and stuff like that can border a little bit on that, but not quite in the same aspect of all of the other characters we've talked today as supernatural.
Yeah, I'd say to me that's not believable, right?
Yeah.
Which is why it didn't like, to me that doesn't really, we don't, it's almost right there. People see it and they see it as someone pretending to be a superhero, but when you see the Undertaker, you actually see someone and think it's the Undertaker. You know what I mean? There's a huge difference there. So I understand why I slept though, because I would have done the exact same thing, and not to take anything away from the athletes and the performers, the wrestlers, like, at all, because they did great with what they had and what they were given, and like those characters were very entertaining. But in terms of supernatural, I wouldn't throw them in there either.
Yeah. One last question here after we go through Stardust here, because I just want to know your thoughts. I don't know how much you actually paid attention when Cody was playing the Stardust character there. Did you see anything there that you felt like there was a lot of room for growth on the Stardust, or would
I
you
love the
prefer
character.
Cody stick to Cody?
Let me tell you, when Cody was dashing Cody Rhodes, I was not a fan. But I don't think I was supposed to be. And then when he ended up, I think they ended up breaking his nose or whatever, where he had that plastic thing on his face, and he grabbed the microphone and talked like a super villain from a comic book. I'm like, that's brilliant. I'm starting to dig this guy now. You know, this guy isn't, he's a talented wrestler. He isn't just writing off his father's name, right? And then when he went Stardust, I'll be honest, I'm not a big fan of Goldust. I never liked that character very much. Not to take anything away from the man under the face paint at all by any means. The character never really sold on it. But Stardust, oh man, did I ever love that character. He took it and ran with it and turned something that could have been a disaster into gold. I love that character. Whether he liked it or not, me as a viewer, as a fan, as someone watching him, I thought that was great. I'm like, this is awesome. He did great with it. He ran with it. He did great with it, and he made money out of something that could have easily been turned into something that people could have laughed at, you know. In the end, like, I'm sure his merchandise was probably pretty high at that point in sales. You know, people loved it. They did. It was a great character.
Yeah, for sure. It revitalized Ascension ultimately for the short period that it happened there, but made them relevant again as they had already started kind of fading into the darkness of the lunchroom at that point.
Such a shame. Such a dominant tag team in NXT. And we could also probably throw them in a supernatural reason being is in NXT they had their eyes completely black. And I don't know, I'm not an optometrist, but someone whose eyes are completely black, they got something wrong with their eyes, or maybe there's something, they're possessed by something. So they could be tossed in there too. But that was a drop ball, with, you know, and knowing APOC, Rick Victor, it's that that guy was, so they could have done something with him, you know, and you know, he's still teaming with Connor. So clearly, if someone with that capability is still teaming after the contracts end with the same person, he sees something in that person, and to me, that's money. Those two guys could be money.
Yeah, Connor just had an appearance on Impact last month as well. A short squash match, unfortunately for him, losing to Josh Alexander, but it was good to see him on TV again, even if it was just for a brief couple minutes of him trying to get out and getting beat down. Ultimately, my biggest question, I think, right now, I guess I did skip over one of the ladies who's involved in these gimmicks here, but it feels like we haven't really seen many females taking on any supernatural roles here. Taking on the abilities, the supernatural powers, the dark brooding characters, the like ability to disappear and reappear. We had Alexa recently with Lily. Impact has had Rosemary and Havoc now in Decay, and they have Su Yung and the Undead Bridesmaids, which we didn't actually touch on, but is another interesting story where they've went more zombie with that, with Su Yung having zombified Kimberly and Brandy. Oh, I forget what her name was, but she had her two kind of bridesmaids that she zombified, had them going out and doing her business under her mind control almost. And then right at the New Year's pay-per-view, she absorbed them into her stomach and announced that she's like pregnant with an undead baby now.
Oh, that's the thing. Like, it could either be turned into something great or something that can be mocked, right? So, yeah, you got to be very careful with things like that, especially because you want to be taken seriously, because companies can lose credibility very quick, and wrestlers and the characters that we're watching can lose credibility really quick. Because me hearing that sounds ridiculous.
Yeah, it kind of was.
But how was the execution? I gotta ask.
It was a little ridiculous. It used like the CGI lightning bolts kind of like absorbing them into the stomach, and then all of a sudden they're gone, and she turns to the side and reveals that she's got a pregnant belly right now.
That's
so
funny.
Congratulations, Su Yang. I believe she actually is pregnant in real life. So, you know, excited for her, and probably won't see the culmination of this story on TV for a little bit if that's the case. But
yeah,
obviously a step there in doing that with the females. But you think there's a reason we haven't seen it with
So
females as much,
I
or if it's something that could have?
actually, when you were mentioning that, my reason I think that is if you look at during the Attitude Era, women were hired just because, not just because, but like the women wrestlers, they had to be pretty, they had to almost be like models. So like so you had like the Tori Wilsons, you had the Stacy Keeblers, the Trish Stratus. Trish Stratus was a good athlete, but she was probably hired a lot on her looks. It just helped out that she was very athletic,
I
and
believe she was a model before she became a
yeah.
wrestler.
So yeah, and then and you know, so like that. So of course they had like Lita and Molly Holly, Ivory, a whole ton of women that were very talented. But it seems like the ones that they wanted to stand out were the ones that were attractive, right? Because at that time, it was a lot about sex appeal for the women,
Yep.
right? Because they were going for more of a gritty type attitude. It was Attitude Era, right? So I think, and but prior to that, you had people like Alundra Blaze, right, who could actually wrestle, and a lot of the female wrestlers from the past who didn't have to be very good looking, you know, it was more about wrestling, but at the same time, like they could kick your butt. But I think it's because we went through a period where it was more about models, bra and panties matches, those types of matches, which kind of doesn't it doesn't it won't encourage athletes. It won't encourage athletes, right? I think that actually forced women's wrestling to go backwards for a good while, till eventually women who actually were good athletes started actually getting noticed, getting jobs, and I think right now we're seeing this now because the women's wrestling had a lot of catching up to do.
Yeah.
And I think that's why we're actually seeing the creativity come up now, because first you had to make them good wrestlers or find the good wrestlers and build on that, build the credibility of women's wrestling, which they have. And so now they can get creative with a little bit of the stuff that might come off silly, but it plays with the imagination, gets, you know, the creativity going, you know?
Yeah. So something that you think we are heading towards then is finding something that's going to work in the female realm here to see a character like that. I mean, AEW, we mentioned a little bit with Chris Statlander playing the alien character over there.
I don't think she's playing an alien. I think she is an alien.
It may be. And then they also have, and I should have pulled the name and research. They also have the one female on their roster right now that comes out with the very undead vibe to her as well.
Yeah, I don't know the name either, but it's such a cool looking character.
Yeah.
Such a good job. And you know what? If she can wrestle, and I'm assuming that's probably why she has a contract with that look, that's so marketable. And there's so much you could do with that. Who would want to wrestle that? It's unbelievable. You know, that's so like that. I'm gonna keep going back to the first question you asked me. Can it work moving forward the next few years? Yes, it can. And it could be a male or a female. Like it could be anybody. You know, look, that's a good example of someone that could eventually take off.
A quick search. It's Abaddon that I'm speaking of. Abaddon in AEW that has that really wild undead look to her.
Yeah, these things can work. It's done right. People want to see it.
Yeah.
You know, done right. People are interested. It's very marketable. You throw it on a poster and it stands out. You know, you throw in a graphic. You know, you're scrolling through, whether you're on Instagram, Facebook, or whatever, and you see a graphic with something like that, you'll at least stop. When it's just someone who just dresses like themselves, there's nothing to that stands out. Sometimes people keep scrolling. You know, it captivates you a little bit more. There is the potential of a lot of that, of there being something like eventually like the Undertaker. Maybe not to that level, because that guy's way up here now in wrestling, above majority of I'd say 99.999, just keep going with the nines, percent of wrestlers in history. He's definitely up there.
Well, that's
like everybody beneath him is incredible.
We mentioned it off the top, right? Like that's the entire conversation about Supernatural. It starts and begins with the Undertaker.
Yeah.
His induction into the Hall of Fame coming here in April is well deserved, well earned. Mm-hmm. You have basically everybody else we've talked about is someone that at some point or in some way you can see an aspect of their character that was either inspired by, influenced by, or at least partially reiterated by the Undertaker's different evolutions over the years. You have Sting, Kane, Abyss, even Bray Wyatt and Mordecai. All of them are because of what the Undertaker did. And you mentioned the posters outside. Undertaker is one of the most recognizable wrestlers in the history of the WWF/E. That you talk to anybody who's watched even 5 minutes of a wrestling program or never watched wrestling in their life, chances are they've at least heard of the Undertaker and are aware of the character.
If he didn't have the entrance he did, do you think he'd be as famous as he became?
I don't know when he actually took off to the way he did. I mean, the entrance has always been fantastic, but his entrance when he was the American Badass was just as amazing, coming out on the bike and that music, right? That
But would people have recognized him just as much as like throughout history? Would he have had the same legacy if he had that to begin with?
I don't think he would have withstood the test of time the way
No,
he has,
I don't
because
think
that
so.
entrance was a big part of who he was. I think a lot of his legacy is the character work and the personification of that character, but the entrance is what ropes in the younger generations through into the early 2000s and the 2010s now and into the 2020s. People see that entrance. They're kids. This guy's been wrestling since before their parents were born.
And
And
the reason I asked that is because it goes back to what made him stand out. His entrance, his look,
yeah,
everything. If he had just come out with just his normal name, like just a regular name, would he have been that successful? Probably not. You know. And right now, hopefully, we can find someone who can carry on, basically do something similar, where they can invent something where people just they see it, they love it, and they get glued to it because someone's imagination, like they did with Undertaker. It's completely possible, but again, that's the difference. Is scrolling down on social media. If you see a graphic of someone who looks like the Undertaker or something like that, you will stop. Right?
yeah.
It's money. To me it's money. It's something very easy to promote. It's something that yeah, like it's and like what AEW is doing with that one character, I think is a really good idea. We'll see how they end up pulling it off. It's marketable. It's money.
He's a character that's withstood the test of time throughout his entire career, and he's someone that we're going to be talking about as a wrestling community and wrestling fans for decades still to come. We're going to be
Yeah.
teaching our kids and our grandkids about this guy that we watched growing up, who was so iconic and so memorable and so consistent and reliable and available, and the WrestleMania streak will live forever.
Yes.
It ended in the ring, but in everybody's mind, that streak is going to live in the history books of wrestling for as long as professional wrestling continues to be successful.
Yeah, I agree with you.
I'm going to throw you up on our big screen here, sir, and let you kind of tell us what you have going on in our life. Unless there was anything else before then that you wanted to jump on, that anyone we've missed, anyone you wanted to bring up.
You know what? With me, it's more just my social medias, and then I've also been wrestling at Real Canadian Wrestling in Calgary, Alberta lately. Just finished a very good match with Heavy Metal, who just recently had his birthday. So happy belated birthday to him. And if you want to keep following me and my progression, because I do look forward to eventually going back to Mexico and just continuing everything that I've wanted to do. You can follow me on Facebook at Omen Gabriel Lestat. You can also, if you want to follow me on Twitter and tweet me, you got at Omen Lestat, right? And then if you would like, I'm going to be tossing some stuff on YouTube. I know I promised that. A little bit has been going up, but you can hop on YouTube, the Omen Gabriel Lestat. And lastly, you can follow me on Instagram at Omen _G _Lestat. And I'll always be posting stuff on there to entertain people, to let people know what's going on. And because I appreciate to entertain you guys as much as I like having you guys come to the shows and shoot me messages. And I know this, I got an arcade here kind of in the way, just on the other side here. But I do have some artwork that I do put on the walls and everything from the fans, because I do absolutely adore you and support you. And if you want to keep following me, so that's how you do it on social media. And in the meantime, when you're not following me, make sure that you're listening to our friend Cody here, because he puts on a hell of an entertaining show.
Appreciate that, sir. I'm going to take the big screen for a second and do a couple pitches here. First and foremost, you can follow me right here at Cody Defoe on all of these social medias, primarily Twitter if you want to actually interact and chat with me and talk wrestling. I got to pitch out to our great sponsor and friends at Manscaped. It's been scrolling at the bottom of the screen there throughout. Absolutely have to give them a shout out for your purposes and benefit. If you head over to manscaped.com right now and use the promo code LOVEWRESTLING, you can get yourself 20% off your entire purchase, as well as free shipping anywhere in the world. Manscaped has just released the Lawnmower 4.0 trimmer to take care of your manscaping region, as well as their crop preserver, crop reviver. They have an ear and nose hair trimmer. They have lots of different amazing products. Check them out on their site. Head over there, use the Love Wrestling code. We want to make sure that you're taking care of your important regions and making sure that you're manscaped properly. So use our code, get that 20% off and free shipping anywhere. Canada, US, Australia, doesn't matter where you're watching, where you're using it from. They'll get it to you and you won't pay anything additional to get it there. Once again, to our friend at RK Athletics, Rich King, shout out happy birthday to Heavy Metal, but we're going to give Rich King a happy birthday whenever it is, because he got to eat the whole cake with his friend TY. So Rich gives us some amazing help here at Love Wrestling, and we'd like for him to give you some help with your fitness goals as well. So head on over to whatever social medias you're using there, give him a follow, send him a message, RK Athletics 1. He'll make sure that you're well looked after and taken care of. And the last bit of housekeeping for myself here, on the bottom here now, you will see at Friend and Foe Show on both Twitter and Instagram. You can give the show a follow, be tweeting out, be letting you know when we've got new episodes coming, new guests coming. Give it a follow. Appreciate all of the support. Appreciate you guys giving me a watch here. For Love Wrestling, you can also give them a follow, us a follow on all of these social medias as well. Facebook.com/LoveWrestlingCA, Twitter at LoveWrestlingCA, Instagram at LoveWrestlingCA, on YouTube, YouTube.com/LoveWrestlingCA, LoveWrestling.ca/shop for the shop, as well as we have our brand new What a Maneuver shop. With some amazing new t-shirt designs on there. You can get a Between Two Beards shirt, the Natural Aster Bizarro, the Love Wrestling, the general print, or the Pride print that has the all of the proceeds from the Pride shirt go to the Trevor Project. New shirts coming out periodically on there. We're always dropping new designs, new shirts, so check that out. And the Love Wrestling show LPW2 Don't Want to Grow Up happens this March 25th from the South Edmonton Common Rec Room here in Edmonton, Alberta, Canada. Get your tickets now. There's a great card going to be happening there. Check on the Love Wrestling socials to see what matches we've got coming up. I believe there was a brand new one just announced today that Zoe Sager, I believe, Love Wrestling Elite Champion Taryn from Accounting is going to be taking on Stephen Crow, the Rhinestone Cowboy, on that show. That'll be an excellent match. Keep your eyes peeled. New match announcements are coming out every week for that show. For the Omen Gabriel, I am the Foe, Cody. This has been a great chat. We appreciate you guys for joining us here. Gabriel, take care. Have a great night.
Pleasure was mine. Cheers.